Now we're looking at Powertool Safety. At the end of this part of the session, I want you guys to be able to describe the checks that you'd make on a power tool before use, explain some of the ways we protect us and others whilst using power tools, recognise the maximum voltage of a power tool we should use on a building site, and identify the safest categories of power tools to use. Power tools. Before working with any power tool, make sure you are trained and competent to do so. Don't work with any tool unless you know how it works, you know how to use it safely. There's lots and lots of risks using power tools: cuts and abrasions, grazes, ear damage, electrocution, and hand-arm vibration syndrome, used to be known as vibration white finger, from incorrect use. It's a damage to the nerves, which we're going to look at a bit later on. So all of these things are a risk from incorrect use or overuse of power tools. Make sure you've had appropriate training, inspect the tool and the cable, and have the correct PPE before you use any power tools. Obviously, check it's the right tool for the task. If you are confident it's the right tool, then make sure you read the user instructions and ask for training if you're unsure of anything. Acquire any PPE you're likely to need. This is likely to be mentioned in the user manual, and we'll look at some of the more commonly used pieces of PPE in this PowerPoint for various tools. Before using any power tools, visually inspect them before use. There should be no cuts or splits in the cable. A good place to check, check the whole cable, but pay particular attention to next to the plug and next to the tool itself, because they're the 2 points where it's going to have the most force exerted on it during normal use. So check the cables, there's no damage to the cable, but also check the tool itself, there's no obvious damage to the tool. There should be a symbol on any tool that you use, electric tool, which is a double insulated symbol, and it looks like this. If you working with power tools on a building site, they should be no more than 110 volts. 110 volts would have a yellow cable coming from a generator normally. It's worth noting that you might also come across blue cables and possibly red cables on a building site. They would be used for various things. The blue cable would be transporting voltage at 220 volts. Red cable would be transporting electricity at more than 400 volts. But they wouldn't be used for your tools. They'd be used for powering the site huts and other tasks. You should check that if you've got a corded power tool, check that the PAT test is in date. That PAT test stands for Portable Appliance Test. And if you're using it on a building site, if you're using a corded power tool on a building site, it should be PAT tested at least every 3 months. If you're working with the same tool in a domestic situation, it should be tested yearly, at least once every 12 months. If using a power tool with a blade, always check the blade's in good condition. That's something I kind of learnt through a mistake when I was on site. I was working with a bladed tool and the blade disintegrated as I was in the purpose of using it, and I was lucky not to survive without significant damage. So yeah, check the blades in good condition before you use it, and also make sure any blade guards are in place. Only change the blade on the tool if you have been trained and competent to do so, If you're not sure, ask for help. Another essential part of using a power tool is making sure that you run the cable safely. So plan the cable route so it's not a trip hazard. Kind of goes without saying, really. Where possible, run the cable above head height or around the edges of the room so it minimises the risk of people tripping over it. If it has to cross a doorway or a road on site, use an appropriate means to protect the cable and prevent people tripping. There's specific equipment that's been designed for this, sort of little ramps with gaps for the cabling. Always handle the cord safely, so don't pick the drill up by the cord. As you can see, it can cause damage near the tool. Make sure you unplug the tool by grasping the plug and pull, and don't jerk the cord to unplug the equipment. And don't drape the power cords over hot pipes or radiators or sharp objects, because that will cause damage to the external insulation and make the tool unusable, unsafe. Obviously, don't plug equipment into defective receptacles either. Okay. If the tool becomes damaged whilst in use, stop using it, let your supervisor know, and look for a replacement. Don't use a power tool or corded power tool in wet conditions, because water conducts electricity, and potentially you can then conduct the electricity from the tool into your own body. If anyone's shocked by any electrical equipment on site, it should be taken out of service and an investigation should be carried out. The safest tools to use on a building site are cordless tools. There's a couple of main benefits to these. The fact that they don't have a cord, they don't have a lead, means that you completely reduce and remove any risk of trip hazards from the cable. Also, they work at a much lower voltage, normally sort of 18 volts, sometimes 24 volts, very rarely more than that, which means that the risk from electrocution is reduced significantly as well. So cordless power tools are the safest type of tools to use, and you should use them wherever possible. Another positive about cordless tools don't need to be pat tested. The tools themselves don't need to be pat tested. The chargers would need to be pat tested every 12 months, but the tools themselves wouldn't need to be pat tested. Okay, quick look at the main hazards from various power tools and how to protect yourself. So the main hazard from corded power tools is electrocution. And if you take the precautions that we've discussed, then the risk of electrocution is minimised. Vibration. Most tools vibrate, and in doing so they can damage the nerves and blood vessels in your fingers. This is called hand-arm vibration syndrome. It used to be called vibration white finger. To prevent this, you should take regular breaks and let your supervisor know straight away if you start to get a tingle in your fingers. Vibration reducing gloves can help reduce, but they should be used alongside, not instead of other more appropriate control measures. The best methods for reducing hand-arm vibration syndrome is using tools with reduced vibration, taking regular rest breaks, limiting the length of time using the tools, and keeping the body warm if working in cold conditions, because this helps improve the blood circulation and reduce damage. Noise. Power tools are very, very loud, and if you're required to work with power tools or near people using them, you should request ear defenders. Ear defenders should be made available to you on request if the noise level regularly exceeds 80 decibels, and they must be given to you by law if the noise levels exceed 85 decibels. They must risk assess that and provide you with these ear defenders. Your employer should then identify this in the risk assessment and tell you you need them and supply them to you, and then you should wear them. So dust and debris is another risk from using power tools. Eye protection gives protection from dust and debris. You might often get sort of small shards of wood or metal or plastic that are dislodged when using drills, sanders, routers, jigsaws, circular saws, etc. So eye protection should be worn, and you might also, in some cases, want to use a face shield like the one shown in the bottom left there. So the goggles up there, face shield there. And dust, dust mask helps protect against dust, often known as a respiratory protective device, because it helps protect your respiratory system. And dust is a significant risk. After asbestos is obviously a real big risk. You wouldn't face that so much on a new building site, but silica dust after asbestos is actually the second biggest cause of industrial lung disease after asbestos, and you will be exposed to a significant amount of that potentially if you're working on a building site. So you need to really make sure that you protect yourself. Okay, now it's time for your task.